welcome to the program. I'm Simisola Adigun, filling in for Deji Bademosi. The biggest talking point right now in the country is President Tinubu's reshuffling of his 45-member cabinet as part of a major restructuring of his administration aimed at improving government efficiency. The 5 dismissed ministers are the Minister of Women Affairs, Uju Ken Ohaneye, Minister of Tourism, Lola Adejon, Minister of Education, Tahir Maman, Minister of State for Housing and Urban Development, Abdullahi Mohammed Gwazo, and Minister of Youth Development, Jamila Bio Ibrahim. The president also formally sacked the suspended Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, Betta Edu. The shake-up announced by presidential spokesman Bayo Ononuga also includes the reassignment of 10 ministers to new portfolios and the nomination of 7 new ministers pending Senate confirmation. The new ministers and their portfolios include Nantawe Yilwatda as Minister of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Reduction, Muhammadu Dingyadi as Minister of Labour and Employment, Bianca Odumego Ojukwu as Minister of State, Foreign Affairs. There's also Jumoke Oduwole as Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment, Idi Mukta Maiha, Minister of Livestock Development, Yusuf Atta, Minister of State, Housing and Urban Development, and Suwaiba Ahmed as Minister of State, Education. The president also renamed the Ministry of Niger Delta Development as the Ministry of Regional Development and scrapped the Ministry of Sports Development and merged the Ministries of Tourism and Arts and Culture, forming the Federal Ministry of Arts, Culture, Tourism and the Creative Economy. Providing more details on the cabinet reshuffle, Ononuga explained, that's the presidential spokesman, Bayo Ononuga. He explained that the decision to remove these ministers was based on public perception and empirical data.
The president has approved the immediate implementation of 8 far-reaching actions to reinvigorate the administration's capacity for optimal efficiency, pursuant of its commitment to deliver on its promises to Nigerians. The President thanked the outgoing members of the Federal Executive Council for their service to the nation, and he wished all of them well in their future endeavors. He has also charged the newly appointed ministers as well as the reassigned ones to see their appointment as a call to serve the nation. The President said, asked all the appointees to understand that the administration is eager and determined to set Nigeria on the path of irreversible growth and invest the best of their abilities into the actualization of government's priorities.
That was the presidential spokesman, Bayo Ononuga, giving details on President Tinubu's cabinet reshuffle. I'm now being joined by political affairs analyst Dayo Akintobi, who joins from another part of Lagos. Also, Mr. Jide Johnson joins us from Ilorin, Kwara State. Welcome to the program, sirs. Now, let's start with you, Mr. Akintobi. What do you think about this cabinet shake-up, as it is called, by President Bola Tinubu? Which of them, which of these dismissals surprised you more?
Well, the Minister of Education was a bit of a surprise, actually. Many people had already assumed that the Minister for Women Affairs would go and the Minister for Tourism would also go, but the education one came as a surprise. Although part of what his scandal, the notion of students not being able to go to university before the age of 18, that caused an uproar across the country, supposedly, quote unquote, is responsible for his being removed from office. But by and large, I look at the 5 people who were removed, and it looks like pretty much window dressing to me. It looks like pandering for political purposes, because the major issues of the country that are bedeviling us were not addressed in this shake-up. The biggest problem we have today is in issues of the economy. We didn't see the Minister of Economy mentioned. We didn't see CBN governor. We didn't see FIRS chairman. Those are the 3 people who hold the economy by the jugular, and all 3 of them are still in place after a year and a half of not being able to address our economic woes. Then I didn't see anything with the Minister of Agriculture. Food security is part of our problem. There's issues of fuel and energy. I didn't see anything said about Heineken Nokpobiri, the Minister of State for Petroleum. So I'm not really sure. This looks more political to me. It looks for political expediency because the entire country was up in arms and there should be a shake-up. So it looks like just pandering to political will to just kind of satisfy the people that, okay, I've shaken up the cabinet and I've reshuffled, but I didn't really see any substance to the 5 people who were removed. It was like a reshuffle with a whimper. I didn't really get any sense of any substantive change, and as a result, I don't expect to see much improvement by way of performance going forward.
How about for you, Mr. Johnson? Which of these dismissals surprised you more? What are your thoughts on the president's move?
First and foremost, I think that is a response to the call of Nigerians that there is a need for the president to do something with respect to his cabinet. One, in terms of composition, and 2, in terms of performance. And I think that what the president did was just to give us a tip of the iceberg. I hope that the president will go further than what he has done. But first and foremost, the president must be commended for doing what Nigerians have been calling for. Let's take this as a starting point of rejigging the entire cabinet and making sure that there are deliverables of democracy. So I'm not surprised, I'm not shocked with whether one minister was removed or one ministry was merged, because majority of those that were appointed as ministers got there as a result of political relevance or political value they will bring to the ticket. And those that have been appointed, you also know that it has more to do with the political value they will bring and not the totality of what they will bring to the government. So as far as I am concerned, I am not shocked when a minister is removed or when a minister is reassigned. What will be shocking is what my colleague said. If you had seen something done with the Ministry of Finance, which is responsible for the fiscal policy of the country, or something is done with respect to the central bank governor, which is responsible for the monetary policy, or something is done with respect to the crisis had in the petroleum sector post subsidy removal, with the Minister of State for Petroleum being given the vote. But other than that, what I think is still business as usual. If we look at it holistically, 7 ministers were sacked, some ministries were merged, 5 ministers were sacked, plus the one that was suspended, making 6. 7 new ministers were appointed. So if you do the mathematics, it's more or less like there's plus 1 minister, despite the fact that some ministries have been merged. As far as I'm concerned, I'm an advocate of reduced cabinet size. I am of the opinion that we shouldn't have more than 18 ministers, because the Constitution makes a provision for each state of the Federation to have a minister. So we can have 18 substantive ministers and then probably 18 minister of states. In actual sense, we could even reduce it to 16, because technically the president and the vice president are members of the Federal Executive Council. So the president is from Lagos State, the vice president is from Borno State. So those 2 states don't even require to have members in the federal cabinet, in my own opinion. So I'm looking forward to what the president will do, whether in the 2nd year anniversary, so that we reduce the number of ministry and then reduce the cost of governance. Other than that, what we have just seen that is done is just the president responding to public opinion, trying to manage perception that his government is finally yielding to the cause of Nigeria to reduce the cost of governance.
We will still address the issue of a reduction of cost of governance, but then one of the points made by the presidential spokesman, that's Bayo Ononuga now, is that there was a public perception, like you said, and that the government wasn't performing. However, quite a number of Nigerians would differ on that notion, especially in the case of the dismissed Minister of Women Affairs, Uju Ken Ohane. I mean, she was everywhere in the news. At one time, she stopped the marriage of 100 orphans in the north, and then, you know, she was also at an event where she stopped it from going on the basis of wasteful spending. Mr. Jide Johnson, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, as far as the issue of the former Minister of Women Affairs is concerned, she was suspended and a committee was set up to investigate the matter. We have not gotten any report concerning that committee. Everything was left in the cooler, and then for the public attention to be taken away from that, and so that we can focus our attention on other issues. I've said it. Someone said, if you don't want to get something done, set up a committee, and if you want to waste people's time, call for a meeting. I think that when you set up a committee to look into the matter and there was no report concerning that, so that we can develop mechanisms that will address some of the loopholes that were exploited during our tenure as Minister for Women Affairs. We didn't have any report. We didn't put in any mechanism to stop the loopholes that were exploited in that particular ministry, and we expect something to change from that particular ministry. What is the difference? Is the person that has supervised that ministry or the newly appointed minister? What's the hope that that same person is not going to do? Is not going to fall on the same banana peel that Ujuken fell on, and that got her relieved of her, first suspended and finally being relieved of her duty. So, as far as some of these issues are concerned, there is no follow through with respect to investigating and rooting the cause of corruption in government and putting in place mechanisms to deal with corruption in government so as to forestall future occurrences of what we have identified as a problem in a particular ministry or department or agencies of government. All we have is just suspension, and then after a while we gloss over it. And remember what happened when she was suspended. She was invited to EFCC office, and EFCC released the picture of her in their office sitting down. So what has come out of even EFCC investigation?
Let me come to you, Mr. Akintobi. There's now a new humanitarian minister, Nantawe Yelwatda, who will replace Betaidu. I recall that Betaidu was suspended in January over the alleged diversion of more than 585 million naira in public funds into a personal bank account. Now, did you have any thoughts that she would make a comeback?
Well, yeah, when we didn't hear anything further about the case, as my colleague has mentioned, when we didn't hear anything further about the case, I assumed it was being swept under the rug. But I really didn't fancy her chances of coming back because the public outcry and the uproar that attended her suspension was massive. And then, of course, she was investigated by the EFCC, and her defense basically was that they gave them a bunch of money to distribute to millions of less privileged women, and she couldn't start sending it account by account to each individual. So they sent the entire money to the personal account of the accountant general of her ministry for that one to disburse. So she said he didn't divert any money. On the surface, it looked like she had a good defense, but EFCC interrogated her. The presidency never recalled her. So we didn't hear anything further about the case, and it's been close to a year now. So I didn't fancy her chances very well of coming back, even if she's not been convicted, or she's not been she's been indicted, which is just an accusation, but she's never been openly cleared of those charges, and there's no way they could have brought her back without sanitizing her completely, because there's that negative perception in the public that this person is corrupt, and without her going through a full public trial, public inquiry in full glare of the public and the media, and being cleared and given a clean bill of health, nobody would have accepted that she wasn't corrupt. So I don't blame the government for not bringing her back, because it would have been a stain on the reputation of this administration and its claims to integrity and to probity, to honesty and all of that. It would have been a stain on that reputation. So they took the easy way out, and since she was already suspended and has been out of office for so long, it wasn't easy to just put her out to pasture permanently. It was a safe path to take, and I don't blame them.
So right now there are 7 newly appointed ministers. That's 2 extra with the 5 replacements. This is coming amid the presidency's word that it's trying to cut down on the cost of governance, just like Mr. Jide Johnson highlighted earlier. But with 2 extra ministers, do you think that this is the case, Mr. Akintobi?
Well, remember that this government already has the largest cabinet since 1999, when we came back to democracy. We've had 45 ministers at this point, up until the appointments. We had 45 ministers, which is top heavy for the administration, and doesn't lend credence to the notion that this government is serious about reducing the cost of governance and reducing the size of government. So we've had 45 ministers. You now sack 6, but appoint 7. So now we've got 1 extra. But at the end of the day, you eliminated 1 ministry completely, or well, yes, eliminated 1 and merged 2. So at the end of the day, we got -2 plus 3. So you have a net gain of 1. So you haven't reduced the size of government. Actually, you've actually increased the size of government. And then the presidency announced that any minister or director or whatever should reduce their convoys to 3 cars. And I asked myself, what kind of a difference would that really make in the scheme of things? That is just papering over the problem. When like the FCT minister, for example, his convoy is reputed to be 15, 20 cars big. But by and large, most of the ministers have relatively decent sized convoys, 3, 4, 5 cars. Even if they have 20, by the time you eliminate 17 of them and you say there's only 3, what does that really do to the size of government? I think the expenses of government, the large expenses of government, come from running costs like, of course, the allowances for ministers. They have 20 different aides. They have special assistants. They have senior special advisors. So just even the salaries and the ESTA codes, not to talk of course, the cars, the diesel, the offices, the ESTA codes when they travel, the real cost of government. If you're serious about reducing the cost of government, as my colleague said, you would merge many of the ministries. You would give some ministers double portfolios. I remember in the first term of the Buhari administration, former Governor Fashola had works, housing, and power, all 3 under 1. Well, it proved to be too much for him, and eventually they removed power.
Now, which now brings me to my next question. Do you think that one minister having more than 1 portfolio, do you think that there would be any effectiveness in, in his work eventually? Wouldn't one suffer for the other?
Well, look at one of the mergers that happened yesterday, for example. Tourism has gone to culture, creative economy, and one other thing. So there's 4 ministries under 1 minister. Now, if you have interrelated, interlocking sectors that are related, for example, you have energy. Energy consists of power. Electricity consists of things like fuel, things like renewable energy, solar. They are interrelated. You can merge many of the ministries that have overlapping functions. You have information, you have culture, you have orientation. You have various things that you can put together that don't necessarily burden or heavy the load of the minister. Remember, the minister is just a leader. He's just a motivator. It's really the civil servants that do the work. The minister is just a political appointee who more or less oversees the entire contraption. He's not really involved in the day-to-day hands-on management of any of the ministries. The civil servants, the technocrats in the ministry, from the permanent secretary on down, they're the ones who do the actual heavy lifting. The minister, as a political appointee, he's just the face of the ministry. He's not actually, in many cases, you even look at the minister, he's not even versed. He's not even versed. Look, for example, Ministry of Aviation today. The minister is a lawyer. What does he know about aviation? What does he know about planes? But he's running that ministry and he's running it supposedly very well. That's because the people underneath him are competent and he's motivating them properly. He's leading them properly. So I would say that the number of mergers don't really matter as long as they're related sectors and the person that you put there is the correct motivator who can get his troops working efficiently and optimally.
Right. Let me come to you, Mr. Johnson. Now, we're still discussing the merging of ministries. How strategic do you think this move by the president is in a bid to reduce cost of governance? And in the first instance, do you think there's a need for so many, there's a need for that division into different arms under the same sector?
Well, there's nothing strategic about this concerning the economy except politics. You should look at the spread of the new ministers that are appointed. Majority of them are from which section of the country. And then if you also look at the Ministry Development and Agriculture, since the president has created livestock development and agriculture, livestock development and food security, I think they should also create ministry for fisheries. So for people down south that are farming on the coastal line. So it's just, for me, we don't need all these ministries. How many departments do you have in America? It's just 13. And the 13th one came as a result of 9/11 because there is no interdepartmental exchange of information among the security agencies in the United States of America. Excuse me. That's why they created the Department of Homeland Security, which makes it to be 13 cabinet. So why can't we have such in Nigeria? So it's just pure yes splitting. What's the difference between culture, information, and creative economy? Or what's the difference, like Mr. Akinjobi said, what's the difference between energy is energy, whether you call it petroleum, whether you call it electricity, whether you call it renewable energy. It could be under one umbrella ministry. What we did also is, okay, we said we are giving power is a federal system of government. We have also created regional developmental commission, Niger Delta Commission, Southwest Development Commission, North Central Development. Now we now created the ministry for what? Are we concentrating power at the center again or devolving power back to the local government? What some of these ministries will do, those functions should have been given to the local government other than for us to centralize. So as far as I am concerned, the president has not lived up to his credentials of what he has advocated for many years as a true progressive that believes in devolution of power, that believes in restructuring and giving power to the federating units and not bringing a lot of power to the center. What we are seeing is the congregation of too many powers to federal agency. There is a systemic move towards unitary system of government and not federal system of government. If you look at what has been done with respect to policies and programs of this present administration, that has always been an advocate of power going back to the local government, power going back to the state government. But what we are seeing is, what livestock? The local government are the actual owners of the land. So if you have a livestock in that, let local government undo that. And those states that are in coastal, local government that are in coastal area, they will undo free ships and waterways. But we are seeing all of these things going on. And the basic thing, like I've said, it's not about you, it's not about I, it's not about you or me, it's about 2027. Just look at the spread of the new ministers that have been appointed and ministries that have been created, and then you understand that what is the focus is how do we secure our political mandate in the future. That's my opinion. I might be wrong, but that's my thinking. That's the strategic point of view I'm taking out of this, because ordinarily we should have seen reform in terms of fiscal policy, in terms of monetary policy, those critical sectors, and in terms of the energy sector. Those critical sectors were left unattended to. And then those areas that we never expected changes to come were the areas in which the president carried out some changes.
Let's discuss the new ministers and their capacities. You must have heard the presidential spokesman say, that's by Ononuga, read out their portfolios. Are you convinced that they will get the work done in line with this administration's mandate? And do you foresee another reshuffle, more dismissals before the end of the president's 4-year term, Mr. Akintobi?
Well, I don't know many of the new people. I do know two of them. I know Sunday Dare, who was a minister in the immediate past administration. I think he was Minister for Youth and Sports. He's accepting to be a special advisor for information and something. It's kind of a step down, really. If you've been a minister before, to accept to be a special advisor is a demotion of sorts, which the average Nigerian won't accept. But if his real goal is service, then it doesn't matter where he's placed. If you're out to serve your people, serve the country, you will accept to serve in whatever capacity you are drafted into. So let's wait and see how he performs. I also am aware of a lady named Jumoke Oduwole, who was appointed as a trade, industry, and commerce, I think it is. She's also reputed to be very competent. She's been in the presidency as a special advisor of sorts for a while. Those two I expect good things from. The others, I really don't know, so I can't speak to their competencies. But by and large, as my colleague has said, I wonder if those who are there now can really, the totality of them can really deliver on the president's mandate. When we still have the same actors in finance, in the economy, in power, in agriculture, the key sectors that make a difference to the problems that Nigerians are facing on a day-to-day basis, those areas were left untouched. So I'm wondering how really possible this renewed hope agenda would be in the next 2 years with even this cabinet reshuffle. From a philosophical point of view, I look at it and I wonder that, well, if after a year and a half, you've removed 5 people, out of those 5 people, a good 2 to 3 of them had no business being ministers in the first place. So it lets me believe that the president puts political expediency ahead of administrative competence. And as my colleague has said, it might be gathering themselves or structuring themselves or strategizing towards 2027 and trying to touch all their political bases in terms of the new appointments, the new ministries. Although I think that scrapping of the Niger Delta ministry might become a problem. I suspect it might, because there's already been an outcry that the Niger Delta, being the breadbasket of all of Nigeria's resources, should have special consideration, as it always has. It should be lumped together with other developmental agencies for the Southwest, the Northeast, and all that it merits its own focus separately. So I imagine that there's going to be some pushback from that move, but all the rest of it seems to be strategic in terms of politics. Will we see additional removals? If it becomes expedient to do so, because this president has shown that he's ready to sacrifice anybody that seems to be a cog in the wheel of his political fortunes. And we saw that any time there's been negative public perception, look at the lady at Women Affairs, the lady at Poverty Alleviation, the Minister of Education, all those people, they all had one scandal or another that ran the risk of tarnishing the reputation of the administration. The president wasted no time in getting rid of them, but the people who are at the helm of the ministries that could make a real difference in our lives, he left them untouched. So politics definitely plays a major role in some of the choices and decisions that the president makes. We'll just have to wait and see going forward what his next move will be.
All right, then, Mr. Daya Akintobi, who joins us from another part of Lagos. Thank you very much for lending your thoughts. Also, Mr. Jide Johnson, who joined us from Ilorin, Kwara State. Thank you very much, sirs, for lending your thoughts. We appreciate it. Well, we'll go on a short break, and when we return, we'll be discussing something else.
Opinions are free, facts are sacred, but truth is universal.
How, in practical terms, can we, for instance, de-escalate the tension?
When you go into public office, you must be ready to answer to the people.
We know where the enemy is. 3 places. The Lake Chad Basin, the border area between Nigeria and Cameroon, and then the Sambisa Forest.
On DEJI360, we give you a complete dose of everything. Opinion, facts, and undiluted truth.
I hardly believe what politicians say in this part of the world.
A new Nigeria is possible, a future is possible.
We delve into the issues, dissect it so that you can understand it, and use it to take action.
I don't think there's any need for any governor to look for grant for ranching.
DEJI360, dissecting the issues.